It's hard to imagine how much worse things can get for Keir Starmer, but every day seems to bring a new disaster. The wheels are coming off faster than anyone could have predicted, and it's not just the opposition or media piling on, his own party is turning against him. Labour's internal fractures are starting to show and the cracks are widening. Starmer doesn't just have a problem with the public, he's losing the trust of his MPs, his voters, and even his allies. And when that happens, there's only one direction left: down. The fact is, Starmer has failed to connect with working-class voters, the very people Labour was built to represent. His polished, lawyerly image doesn't resonate with the millions of people struggling with rising costs, stagnant wages, and declining public services. Instead of offering bold solutions, Starmer comes off as cautious, calculated, and completely out of touch. He's more focused on managing optics than addressing the real issues facing everyday Brits. That might work in the short term, but in the long run, it's a recipe for disaster. Take the economy. Starmer likes to talk about fiscal responsibility, but under his leadership, Labour hasn't offered a compelling vision for economic recovery. People are hurting, energy bills are skyrocketing, inflation is eating away at paychecks, and businesses are closing left and right. What does Labour propose? Vague promises and half-baked policies that don't inspire confidence. Compare that to the Conservatives, who, for all their faults, are at least trying to project strength. And now Reform UK is coming up fast, offering a populist alternative that's pulling disillusioned voters away from both major parties. Starmer's failure to address these challenges head-on is costing him dearly. And then there's the grooming gang scandal. This issue is a political minefield, but Starmer's handling of it has been nothing short of disastrous. By refusing to support a national inquiry, he's alienated victims and their families while giving his critics even more ammunition. The perception is that Starmer is more concerned with political correctness than with justice. Whether that's fair or not, it's the narrative that's sticking, and it's doing immense damage to Labour's credibility. Elon Musk calling him Squirmy Starmer may seem like a sideshow, but it reflects a growing sentiment that Starmer is weak, indecisive, and unwilling to confront uncomfortable truths. When high-profile figures like Musk and Trump are weighing in, it's not just a domestic issue anymore, it's an international embarrassment. Starmer's leadership style is also under intense scrutiny. He talks a big game about unity, but his actions tell a different story. The exodus of councillors from Broxtowe is just one example of how Labour is losing its footing in traditional strongholds. These aren't random defections, they're a sign of a deeper malaise within the party. Starmer's critics accuse him of abandoning Labour's core principles in favour of chasing middle-class, metropolitan voters. The result? He's alienating the very base that Labour depends on to win elections. What's worse, Starmer's attempts to rebrand Labour as a party of competence are backfiring. The £80,000 spent on redecorating the media room at Downing Street is a perfect example of how out of touch his priorities seem. While pensioners struggle to heat their homes, Starmer is spending taxpayer money on paint and furniture. It's a small detail in the grand scheme of things, but it speaks volumes about his leadership. People notice these things, and they don't forget. The donations controversy is another nail in the coffin. Starmer's acceptance of expensive gifts from millionaire donors undermines his claim to be a man of the people. It raises serious questions about who he's really working for. Labour is supposed to be the party of the working class, but under Starmer, it's starting to look like a club for the wealthy elite. This is the kind of hypocrisy that voters despise, and it's coming back to haunt him. It's not just the scandals, though. Starmer's lack of charisma is a major liability. Politics is as much about personality as it is about policy, and Starmer simply doesn't have the kind of magnetic presence that inspires loyalty or enthusiasm. Compare him to Boris Johnson, who, for all his flaws, knows how to connect with people and rally support. Even Nigel Farage, with his divisive rhetoric, has a knack for getting people fired up. Starmer, on the other hand, comes across as dull, uninspiring, and overly cautious. That's not what the country needs in a time of crisis. The polls don't lie. Labour's once commanding lead has evaporated, and the party is now in free fall. Reform UK is gaining momentum, the Conservatives are holding steady, and even Starmer's own supporters are jumping ship. The numbers are devastating. 38% of Labour voters don't like him, and 69% of the public thinks the country is heading in the wrong direction. These aren't just bad stats, they're a death sentence for any political leader. So what happens next? Starmer's days as leader are clearly numbered, but the big question is who will replace him. Labour needs a leader who can reconnect with the working class, rebuild trust, and offer a bold vision for the future. Whether such a person exists within the party remains to be seen. One thing's for sure, if Labour doesn't get its act together soon, it risks becoming irrelevant. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are waiting in the wings, ready to capitalise on Labour's implosion. Boris Johnson is already making moves, and you can bet he's watching this chaos with a smile on his face. Reform UK is also a wild card, and if Farage continues to gain ground, he could reshape the entire political landscape. Starmer's failure isn't just a Labour problem, it's a symptom of a larger crisis in British politics. The old rules no longer apply, and the next election could bring some major surprises. In the end, Starmer's legacy will likely be one of missed opportunities. He had a chance to rebuild Labour, to offer real solutions to the country's problems, and to provide a credible alternative to the Conservatives. Instead, he's led the party into a downward spiral from which it may never recover. For Keir Starmer, the clock is ticking, and time is running out fast.